All right, everyone. Steve Metrics here of Db8 Sports. And today I am flying solo. So it is a little bit short today. Just gonna be myself. DJ Triggs is a little under the weather, but he will be back with us tomorrow at at 7 o'clock Central here every Monday, Tuesday. So he will be with us tomorrow. And I hopefully he's all good and things are good, but we'll see what happens. But today's show, want to pick up kind of what's going on in the NFL right now. So there's definitely a lot of defensive football being played. And especially with myself being a Raider and going through one of the lowest scoring games of the league and the entire season yesterday, there is definitely something going on where the defenses are catching up to the offenses. But I think we're at a point, and we saw this with the retirement of Tom Brady and the retirement of Peyton Manning and the retirement of Drew Brees. And now we're about to get the retirement of Aaron Rodgers in the near future, that the higher echelon of quarterbacks that have been in the league are now beginning to filter their way out. And the ones who have already proven their worth have done so at a very high level that now they are very well compensated. But in doing so, takes away the money that can be distributed amongst these teams. So with that going on, it kind of makes it tough for a team to really have a well-oiled machine on offense and have something that can kind of keep adding to it. Some of the exceptions, though, are going on tonight. So if we check tonight's Monday Night Football games, there's two of them. And I know I don't like it either. I want one Monday Night Football game when it comes to the primetime games. Makes it way easier, and I don't get why they do this. But there are two games tonight. So two of these four teams have quarterbacks in the right place where they're not crazy overpaid and they've developed and they're doing well. But what goes into those? We'll talk about it. But the two quarterbacks I'm talking about right here are Jordan Love and Tua Tagovailoa. Both those guys are young, have had adversity, have had time to learn a little bit, and have grown into the offenses that they're playing with now in a very successful way. And in a way that, with not having all that salary cap dumped on them, that it allows them to build the team around them and really spend at a high level at positions of need. So for obviously Miami in the coming years, that's going to allow them to spend more money on defense. Just the same with the Green Bay Packers. They need to spend money on bits and pieces of, especially that front line interior to stop the run. That's definitely a thing that they can do. Also, a little bit on the offensive line here and there. But the good thing is that flexibility that's generated from not having all that cash stricken to one player. But the other thing that I think plays into this too is injuries. And when it comes to Tua Tagovailoa, that could happen in the future. But again, they don't have all this cash tied up to them. So they can play this cautiously. They can play this in kind of a dance where, hey, they see what happens with him if again he has another devastating head injury, or we know he has the mid section of his body, the hip injury from exiting college. That's another one that's very severe in my opinion. So Miami can be very cautious about this, but the good thing too is when you have an offensive-minded head coach, they generally do well with multiple quarterbacks within that room. So I think that's very beneficial to both the Green Bay Packers and the Miami Dolphins, is that they can figure out kind of a quarterback of the future. Look at the Cincinnati Bengals with what they're doing with Jake Browning after losing Joe Burrow. So things like that work out really nice, and it allows you that flexibility and growth. But I think that's a big thing that is going on right now, is that we don't have that ability for teams to bring in very stable veterans that can kind of be almost like a plug and play. And then we don't have those almost like can't miss surefire rookies coming into the league. Maybe this year there's a bit of a change of that. We'll see. But let's be honest, when it comes to those guys, there's really only about a handful of them at most that should be like a plug and play, succeed, and the team's good to go. The majority of these quarterbacks go to bad teams that have bad offensive lines. And that is almost something that some quarterbacks, like Joe Burrow, can't escape. Pretty much Cam Newton, his entire career, same thing. He almost had a bad offensive line for almost every single year he was a Carolina Panther. So it's very tough to escape that when it happens. But that's the thing is coming into the league with a bad offensive line or being cash stricken with so much money, you can't spend it at positions of need that can hold back your team. And in the NFL right now, it is in a very peculiar place that it can't avoid any of that. So it's a very, very short list of teams that can have a young up and coming quarterback, or they have a older veteran quarterback that they don't have to spend money with. I think the only team that I can almost put into that category right now, in a weird, odd twist of fate, is probably the Cleveland Browns and Joe Flacco. This is a guy who's definitely been in the league for years. He was supplanted by Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, obviously. And now he has been out of the league almost the entire season and is now back with the Cleveland Browns after being with the New York Jets last season and a little bit of the Philadelphia Eagles in the early stages of Hurts's career. So it's very interesting how that stuff is going on. But I think it's very hard to find someone like that. You really need to find someone that has that itch, that real motivation to have something to prove, something to show. Maybe Derek Carr has that with the Saints, but again, I've seen a lot of Derek Carr, and I just don't think it is something that will generate a championship with a successful franchise. Great guy, not a great quarterback. So it's very tough. There are very few teams that almost have that potential. And I'm in this agreement that a lot of teams really should be drafting a quarterback every season, whether it's a rookie or bringing someone in. You have to keep that quarterback room ready to go, fresh, and able to step in at a high level when that time is called. And kind of looking at the Giants tonight too, with Tommy DeVito, he's kind of that guy where it's like, hey, you lost Daniel Jones. Tommy DeVito steps in, takes a little bit to get up to speed, and then succeeds. So Tommy DeVito's probably not the guy, but he is definitely a guy who's kind of playing at that high level that perhaps can do something in the future. But we'll see. New York is a team that is really in a tough spot with just kind of how their team is built for now. But I don't know. They have been playing well. Again, I've always liked their wide receiver weapons. It's unfortunate what happened to Darren Waller. And they have Saquon Barkley, who also went down. So losing those two guys really is taking a big component out of that offense. I think that's really what's going on there. But looking at some of these other teams, who are these quarterbacks that can really say, hey, I'm on a team-friendly deal. I'm a strong, capable quarterback, and the team built around me is really, really good. Let's just go division by division. And again, we're just talking about Tommy DeVito and the Giants. I don't think he's really that one. But when I look in that division, I see the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders and the Dallas Cowboys. As much as I like Jalen Hurts, and I really liked him last season, there is absolutely something going on with his knee. And there's also something going on where it feels like it's too much muscle, too much mass, that it's taken away from almost his sheer athleticism, almost putting too much of that power on that body might be playing a role into it. It is playing into the contract. This is a team that has been injured on the backside as well with the tight end position, losing Dallas Goedert, and kind of that feud you had between Ertz and Goddard a while back is still kind of lingering in a way. And I think they need to do something more at that tight end position, and at least something with a slot, because it pretty much feels like they only play outside and they only have a few running backs that they really like to go to. And then Jalen Hurts running the football with the brotherly shove. I just don't feel like that's enough on an offense. I don't think there's enough creativity. I think it's too much outside go routes, and there needs to be more dynamic pieces of that offense in the middle of the field. So that's where I'm at with Philly. I do like Dak. It does feel like he's healed from whatever injuries he had last season. It feels like he's really cooking on all 8 cylinders. That offense is coming together. The receivers look good. I like that. That's another one that I think is, they got their guy. They're ready to go. And the beauty of the Dallas Cowboys now, too, is that with Mike McCarthy there, Trey Lance just got traded. Look at that as a team that maybe does something in a Green Bay style of taking a quarterback and developing them for multiple seasons to come. If Trey Lance has a good 3 years to develop and learn from Dak Prescott, just like Aaron Rodgers, just like Jordan Love, that's going to do him wonders. And truly, we are seeing now that is the best way to develop a quarterback and pretty much almost guarantees success. But people are impatient. Owners are impatient. Owners run businesses. They're not in the business of saying, yep, I like that guy. Let's make him wait 3 years. That's not a common, almost unreasonable thing to think of in today's society. But the Green Bay Packers have mastered that. That is their bread and butter. And a guy who was a Green Bay Packer, Mike McCarthy, is going to do that in Dallas with Trey Lance. So that's a thing. Dak has had some pretty rough injuries on the upper part of his body. So maybe 3 years from now, they're going to have more data to analyze and figure out where is he in his career. Is he someone that we can do more with, or is he someone that we're going to keep Trey Lance as a backup for even longer? Or maybe they feel at that point they can deal him to a team that runs a similar style of offense. Something like that could work, and I definitely think that does well for that quarterback. So I like Dallas. I do like Philly in a certain aspect, but Hurts has to heal. And then Washington is a very interesting team. Washington has Sam Howell, who I've liked. I've liked him since North Carolina. I've liked him since he was the new guy since Trubisky left. And I think he really has power, but he is playing behind an awful offensive line. So for the new coach there, that is something that is going to have to make it happen. But for a guy that puts up the yardage that he puts up, it's showing that he can read that defense before he has the football even in his hands. And I think that is something that can actually do that guy some real wonders. So he has good weapons around him. They do have to improve some things in the running back position for sure. But that's a team that I think with a new head of the voice of that team, especially on the offensive side, that might be their guy. So there's some good quarterback play actually in that division. We go to the North, and this is where I think there is serious concern for almost every single team in this division. And again, I brought it up earlier. I do like what the Green Bay Packers are doing. So this is the one team that I have the exception to that rule. I think they found their guy. It's a young team, young culture. I think that's exactly what they have to do. The head coach and the quarterback are starting to figure it out together. That's what it takes. When I look at the other 3 teams in the division, I think all 3 of the other teams have serious questions that they have going forward. Minnesota flat out does not have a quarterback. Legitimately. Dobbs is a backup, and so is Nick Mullins. Then Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles. He's going to come back. How much longer is he going to play? Does he even want to play for much longer too? So I think that team has a good team built, but they really don't have a quarterback. So they need one. Detroit is one. And I am one of those Jared Goff owners who definitely got burned in fantasy this week. So Jared Goff has these splits. He really doesn't play well outdoors, and it shows. And to me, I don't think that is your true quarterback of the future. And that is not your quarterback who's going to get there. When Jared Goff got to the Super Bowl, it was because that LA Rams defense was stellar. The Lions have a nice secondary, but it's not that great. That team can definitely be run on, and the Green Bay Packers absolutely destroyed them last week. So I just do not see that team as being a team that can really win a championship with Jared Goff at quarterback. And when you're turning the ball over, you're not making good decisions. There's something going on in your play that's not right, and we'll see. So that's not a team that I like at quarterback. Same thing with Justin Fields. A lot of wild stuff, not winning games. There's got to be more there. I do like his style of play. I do like the way he can do it. But is he really going to be that quarterback with them being able to draft number 1 overall? I don't think so. So that's that. The entire NFC South. Yep. The entire NFC South, they all need quarterbacks. Real simple. Tampa Bay. Bryce Young is not the guy in Carolina. Desmond Ritter is not the guy in Atlanta. And Derek Carr is not the guy in New Orleans. So that's simple. That whole division needs quarterbacks. The West, Brock Purdy is a good guy. I think he works well with Kyle Shanahan. I think Shanahan works well almost with any quarterback. I think he's like the Andy Reid of the NFC. So Brock Purdy is totally the right fit, good guy to have. They'll probably bring in another quarterback at some point. Maybe keep, what's his name? Sam, forgot his name, but it's a former quarterback of the Jets and former quarterback of the Panthers. So it is what it is, but Purdy plays pretty well. So he's the guy. Seattle is another one. Geno Smith makes some really killer plays when he has protection, but if he's on the move, it's not that great. It's kind of Lamar Jackson-ish. So I don't know exactly if Geno Smith is the guy, but there are times where he can really, really play well. So I love his comeback from adversity, and I do love that Seattle is now one of those teams that's really looking good, really fighting well. Even Drew Lock is a really nice backup that they have up there for that team. So looks good there. The Rams, Bradford they have, but obviously he's not going to be there for much longer. Kyler Murray is a quick, speedy quarterback. I like him, but again, this ACL injury. The good thing is they paid him already. So they're not really committing any more money in the future. They're just going to have to ride him out and see what they got. So probably about half the teams in that division are going to need quarterbacks moving forward. So that's kind of the way we can kind of play with that. Maybe 1, maybe 3, maybe 2. So as a whole, I would say the entire NFC, we have, let's call it 2 from the West, 4 from the South, 3 from the North. That's 7, 9, and probably at least 1 or 2 from the East. So in that conference alone, you have 10 teams that are already thinking about the quarterback of the future. So that's the NFC. If the AFC is anywhere close to that, it really shows what is going on in today's NFL with not having enough quarterbacks to really lead these teams in the way that they should. So I just went out west with the NFC. Let's go out west in the AFC. And this is where it gets interesting. And I'm going to make the case that at least three out of the 4 teams in the division out west in the AFC needs a quarterback. So Denver is one of those teams, just like Arizona, that has a quarterback they overpaid and they're stuck with, but he's playing okay. Is he really going to take them far and win a championship? I don't think so. That's pretty much Russell Wilson. He doesn't have that mobility that he has before. He has a huge arm. He can make some weird reads downfield, and he's a guy. My Raiders, we absolutely need a quarterback. So we're two. That's two. Then we get at the Chargers, and this is a weird team. Before I get to the fourth team that I have issues with, the Chargers, man, I think they have the guy, but the way they're calling this offense, the way this team is led from an owner standpoint, and just the way that this team is so weird. I really hate what's going on with Justin Herbert because I think he's a great quarterback, but for whatever reason, you chose not to hire Sean Payton. And that's an offensive genius. And you need an offensive genius with Justin Herbert. You need someone who can solidify that offense and keep the same language and develop him as a quarterback. And right now, they do not have that. And the offense is a mess. They can't score points. And it's weird. They're loaded with weapons. And your quarterback who has a broken middle finger on his non-throwing hand is really having a tough time out there. So that's that. Then let's go to the Chiefs. And I feel, and I've felt this since last season, and pretty much up until the playoffs when they finally had 2 weeks off and were able to rest, I think there are serious concerns with Mahomes and pretty much anything else that goes on offense. I think Isaiah Pacheco is probably the best part of the future of that offense, probably along with Rashi Rice. Those two guys, I think, are young and can do great things in this offense on their own. I think everyone else is dependent on each other, but not in a good independent chemistry way. Look at the Miami Dolphins who are playing right now. Tyreek Hill was a Kansas City Chief. That was a dynamic element that they absolutely needed to stay. And they felt that they were better, more creative on offense, and that he could go, along with Eric Bieniemy, who was an offensive coordinator for this team. And I think the other thing that's going on too is I think Mahomes is being figured out as a quarterback. And I think he's also breaking down physically. So looking at a guy like that and seeing how he is starting to lose his cool with especially the play that happened yesterday at the end of the Bills game, I think we're seeing a guy who wants more calls, a guy who's gotten more calls and complained about more calls in many, many games prior to this season, that now those calls are going against him. And he just doesn't have the physical firepower to fight back. And that is exactly what I think is going on with the Chiefs. So if it were me, I would absolutely want to think about a quarterback of that team in the future. This is a team that can also find a way to get themselves out of that contract. They've paid a lot up front, but there are ways that they can get out of it. It is one of the most complex quarterback contracts ever made from last I heard. So there's some things going on there. There's some ways out, but I just don't like the way that the Chiefs are playing offense right now. It is miserable, and it is not a team that can just light it up for 30 points like that. Unless you're the LA Chargers, then they can score at will against you. So that's what's going on with the Chiefs. So right there, I think that's three quarterbacks for that division. Go to the AFC South. So the South has some interesting teams, some teams that still need to wait and see, and some teams that definitely need to move on, especially the Tennessee Titans playing tonight. Ryan Tannehill was there. I think he's going. Will Levis and Malik Willis, they need to basically have more time to show kind of how they play. And it may not work. It may be something where they need to get more guys, get more quarterbacks. So they really don't know what they're doing either. So Tennessee is a team. Jacksonville has Trevor Lawrence. Man, there are things where he looks really good and things where he looks frazzled and is very confused by the defense. So I am concerned about that. And I do wonder if the NFL is too fast for this guy. So I think this is another wait and see. And then we look at Indianapolis, who just drafted a young quarterback who got hurt and is done for the year. That is a really, really talented young quarterback that can do some amazing, amazing things. But the thing is, too, you have to play smart within the pocket. You have to be athletic within the pocket, but you don't have to be so athletic that you risk your health by maneuvering outside and really taking bad hits. And to be honest, nowadays, a lot of these quarterbacks are doing that. Your Mahomeses, Lamar Jacksons, even Russell Wilson, unfortunately, they're all taking those big time hits. So if you can be smart about it, if you can work your way through the pocket and around, there's two guys doing that right now, and they're in the NFC. I think Dak Prescott absolutely does that well, and actually Jordan Love does that well, especially with a throw last week where he stepped around, kind of moved up, and just fired. That was the kind of style that you need to see to be successful and stay in this league for a long amount of time. So that's what's going on there. So we look at that AFC South. I think we're talking about maybe three teams. I think CJ Stroud is excellent. Well, if I'm any of those three other teams, I'm not sold on anyone else that's left. I think there are two wait and sees. So maybe you got truly one team that needs a quarterback. So we'll call it one. We'll call it one. The others are all young and developing, and in a good way too. So I like those three teams, to be honest, at quarterback. So that's five already. So 10, 5, that's almost half the league. And we know we're going to cross that 16 threshold. So we go to the AFC North. The Bengals overpaid, and they have a quarterback that's really banged up every single season. So they need to figure it out, but they got Jake Browning, so we'll see. But Joe Burrow is excellent. When he is out there, he is absolutely phenomenal. One of the best arms out there, is great within the pocket, has that athleticism. He's great. He just needs to be out there. So, yeah, you got Browning, you got Burrow, you already paid. Live with it. That's a really good team. So I like what they got there. I like Cincinnati a lot, actually. Cleveland, they got Joe Flacco, they got Dorian Thompson Robinson, they have Deshaun Watson. That's a team that has some good pieces in place. I think they're good. So those two teams I like. Let's go to the Baltimore Ravens. They got Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley. They've paid. They know what they got there, and I think they got a good momentum, good culture there. They know what their identity is. So that team definitely does not need a quarterback. The final team in that division is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bringing in Mitch Trubisky, having Kenny Pickett, having some questions at the offensive coordinator coaching position, it's all not really been working. Kenny Pickett looked great in college, but now in Pittsburgh, with the years he's had here, the injuries he's had, it just hasn't come together. You have two guys who are very questionable and similar. I think this is a team that needs some. They're like everyone else. They either need a veteran or they need to draft again. So that's a team that needs a quarterback. So right now we're at 6. We'll go to the final division, the AFC East. The Jets, they might have it. But the good thing is, too, you have a veteran quarterback and you have a young developing quarterback who's been in the league for about 2 years now, 2-3 years. So that helps. If that's the case, I think the Jets might be one of those teams that ironically could be in a good position despite struggling with QB all season practically until this Sunday. So I like that. The Patriots definitely need a quarterback. The Bills have Josh Allen, who's fantastic, but can really get banged up and plays that very physical style football. So you have a guy there. But could you draft one and develop him for 3 years? Absolutely. So that is a team that I would love to see get a quarterback as well and just let him sit. When Mitch Trubisky was actually in Buffalo, I thought that was the perfect spot for him. I thought that was a great spot for him to develop and learn and get better. And then maybe 3 years from then, switch to another team. Instead, he stayed for one, went to Pittsburgh, and it's been really dicey. So he bet on himself. And I just don't think it's working. I think if he would wait a little bit longer, learn more, and then go for it, I think he would actually really succeed. So that's my feeling there. But I do like Buffalo actually drafting a quarterback at some point. Miami has Tua, same thing. Do what we just talked about. you have a guy who's kind of there, but could really get banged up. So Buffalo could get a quarterback. Then we look at the Patriots. They absolutely need a quarterback. For me, I'd put Malik Cunningham out there. He's my guy. He's my like rookie Lamar Jackson kind of style of a guy. And I think that's exactly the juice that that team needs. So right there, we got about three teams. Ironically, the Jets are the one team where we're kind of you can kind of keep your guys, and you should be okay. I think there's just not enough quarterbacks out there in the league, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking so few quarterbacks in the league. A team that's been deprived at quarterback, like the Jets, it's just not going to do much difference because they have a veteran, they have a young guy who's going through growing pains, and then there's nobody else left to go to. So I think that is a team that is what you have to live with. So you got three teams there. You got six across the rest of the conference. That's a total of 9. So we take 10 from the NFC, 9 from the AFC, and that is 19 franchises that need quarterbacks. Nearly 2/3 of the league are looking for quarterbacks. So that's pretty tough right there. So a little bit. I got a fantasy comment here from our guy James. With his team imploding, and he needs help to deal with the losing. And do you have any advice? So the advice that I have when it comes to fantasy at this point in the season is really look at who is really being implemented into an offense. And unfortunately, I actually had the mistake where I put in a player who I thought would have high volume, but didn't. And we're really getting familiar with how teams are running their offenses now. But we also have tools out there that are telling us how teams are scoring and what defenses are giving up. So when it comes to that, the two sources I like to go to for now are Pro Football Reference. That can show you each position in fantasy and where these defenses are weakest. And then, when it comes to the wide receiver position, your slot receivers and your outside receivers, go to Razball, razball.com. Let me put that in the comments there. That is a site that can really tell you the difference between slot and outside receivers. So when you do that, you can kind of get a feel for how an offense is going to do what it does and what players are going to score. I felt this week, especially with the Ravens against the Rams, that the Rams kind of had a sneaky good secondary, and then I could go with an Isaiah Likely, a tight end who is in place of Mark Andrews, and get something done. But I wasn't too sure about Zay Flowers. I like the kid, but there is some good numbers supporting the Rams nickel against a slot receiver like Flowers. So they seem to do well against him the entire game, but towards the end is when he really broke loose. And then obviously they go into overtime, and then there's more production there. But I think that's what it is. Now that we have more weeks, we have more data, we can generalize more of what's going on in the league. And I think that's how we get through it. It can't just be, oh, this guy's a stud, start him regardless. There's really only one guy you can say, and that's Christian McCaffrey. And in my eyes, and our boy DJ Triggs is supporting that as well, that the true MVP of the league is Christian McCaffrey, because he does so much into that offense, and his numbers prove it, that he is a dynamic weapon, and he is truly the cog in that machine that really runs that offense in a way like nothing else does. Having him is such a crazy piece in that offense that it is so dynamic that you take him out, now that team falls back to earth. They can put in another running back, but having a Christian McCaffrey and a Christian McCaffrey 2.0 and Debo Samuel, that's game changing. But at least taking one of those out makes it a little bit different. But Christian McCaffrey is clearly the best running back in the NFL, and his numbers support that every single week, almost regardless of offense. And he's one of those few running backs who actually has had success against the tougher defenses in the league, like a Cleveland. So In my eyes, that's why he is your MVP. He is out there. He wins games for you. And as good as Tyreek Hill is, he lost a game for the Miami Dolphins as well. He got stripped, and that was a strip 6 taken to the house. So that's where I feel that is a strike against that kind of player, and that's why it's Christian McCaffrey. So I think that's the kind of advice that you need for playing fantasy, especially this deep into the season, is use the tools you need and really play the matchups. Don't just play the players. At this point, we know who teams are and we know who defenses are, especially with the defenses in the league being so good at what they do. That's what you have to lean on. You have to lean on what holes are and opportunities there are from the opposing defenses, and then execute those with the players who can deliver on those openings and those defenses. So I had a feeling that would happen with Kansas City, actually, with Jerick McKinnon. And I was this close to starting him. And had I actually had the knowledge that the Cleveland Browns' Amari Cooper was back, then I would have not gone with Elijah Moore, but you live and learn. So yeah, that's kind of what it is. Go off of information, go to the injury lists that are out there in the league. Actually, ESPN to me has the best injury list of every sport, whether it's like NFL or NBA, and then use those matchups like a Pro Football Reference and a Razzball. Using those elements together, also understanding the weather of your game, I think that's how you do it. That's how you figure out your way, through the final weeks of your fantasy season. So I think that's everything we got for tonight. And we'll be back tomorrow, same time as tonight, and hopefully with our boy, DJ Triggs. So with that, I'm Steve Metrics. You can check us out on all our platforms below here on our little ticker. And we'll see you tomorrow. So, yeah, I'm Steve Metrics. That's no debate.